Good morning, everybody. How are you all doing today? Welcome to another episode of Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank you all for joining me today. This is episode 163 of Hockey on the Spot. And for today, we are going to officially conclude the NHL's 30 teams in 30 days. Yesterday's video, we did the final team and finished off the Pacific Division and the Western Conference with the Anaheim Ducks. They were the last team of the 30 teams in 30 days. Today, we're officially going to put this topic to bed. And for today's video, the last video on this topic, we're going to do a full 30 and 30 recap. Where basically, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it is just a recap. All I'm going to do is talk about any late signings that I missed when I talked about a specific team, any re-signings that happened that I missed, pro tryout contracts that have been handed out that I've missed, and I've quite honestly missed most of them. The only one I really covered was Simon Gagne going to the Boston Bruins on a PTO. Any teams that may have new uniforms for the upcoming year, and just maybe what the teams will look like as a whole, and then we'll end it off with a full recap of all the teams that I said were going to make the playoffs this year. So let's go right into it, a full recap of the 30 teams in 30 days. So we'll start with some of the late signings and re-signings that occurred during this topic. As far as re-signings were concerned, obviously from October 1st onward, as far as what I've missed, as far as this topic is concerned, the one new player signing that I never really got to talk about was a recent one of fourth-line center Ryan White signing a one-year deal with the Philadelphia Flyers. This is a good signing by the Flyers because it adds a little bit more depth to their center group, and he is a solid fourth-line center, playing for the Montreal Canadiens over the last couple of years. Last season for Ryan White, if I recall, he had a pretty good year. He had 2 goals and 6 points in 52 regular season games, and he had 1 goal in 3 Stanley Cup playoff games. So, and he was a -8, 50 penalty minutes and 51 shots on goal during the regular season, -1, 23 penalty minutes and 4 shots on goal during the playoffs. So actually, it wasn't even that great of a year for him. He wasn't really playing much. This was the most games he's played in his career. And actually, it's the most points he's had in his career. But for Montreal, their lineup is too full for a guy like Ryan White, who's 26 years of age. He should help out the Philadelphia Flyers. That is, if he manages to get healthy in time for training camp. He did suffer a recent injury, unfortunately, according to reports. He did suffer a recent injury in which he had surgery to repair his left pectoralis muscle. That was on Wednesday, and the team announced it Thursday. The injury occurred last week during an off-ice workout, and there's no timetable for his return. He signed a 1-year, 2-way contract with the Flyers on October 7th. So, we'll see. Hopefully it all works out. But again, it is a 2-way contract, so even if he comes back, he may not even make the team. He may just go to the Lehigh Valley Phantoms of the American Hockey League. Their American Hockey League affiliate is no longer the Adirondack Phantoms. So, they're now the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. And then everything else I pretty much missed were re-signings. Were re-signings like couple players re-signed by the New York Rangers. Forwards Ryan Bourque and Danny Cristo. They both got signed by the Rangers. Two very valuable minor AHL players. Cristo in particular could end up being a mainstay in the lineup. Lance Boma re-signed with the Calgary Flames. Good job by the Flames. He is a workhorse. The Philadelphia Flyers re-signed defenseman Brandon Manning at last. He's a guy who's going to battle for a spot this year. And then, most recently, Justin Schultz re-signed a one-year bridge deal with the Edmonton Oilers. That's good for the Oilers. At least they have him for this year. But actually, one other big signing I almost forgot to mention, and actually a really, really big signing that's not listed here that happened, was the signing of college standout forward Kevin Hayes. He is the younger brother of Florida Panthers forward Jimmy Hayes, former first-round 24th overall pick by the Chicago Blackhawks during the 2010 NHLG draft, and he was their number 5 prospect in their top 10. It was announced when he got out of college that he would not sign an entry-level deal with the Blackhawks, and the rule was if he didn't sign by August 15th, he would be sent to unrestricted free agency, which is exactly what happened. He didn't sign, and he went to unrestricted free agency. And so the Kevin Hayes sweepstakes became a big deal, and a lot of teams were out for him, including the Calgary Flames, the Florida Panthers, the New York Rangers, the Boston Bruins, and the Colorado Avalanche. Those were the big teams in it for him. He did not, and honestly, it was a good thing he didn't sign with the Blackhawks because at 22 years of age, with how deep they are as it is, it's more likely than not that he would not be able to make a spot on the team. So, ultimately, it ultimately made sense, for him to leave. And it's kind of interesting that he didn't go to the Flames or the Panthers, because with the Flames, he would have reunited with his 2 college line mates, center Bill Arnold and Hobey Baker Award-winning left winger Johnny Gaudreau, who's going to make the Flames this year. The Florida Panthers, he would have reunited with his brother. Originally a Toronto Maple Leafs second-rounder, was acquired by the Blackhawks in a trade, and then, of course, the Hawks ultimately traded him to Florida. And with the Boston Bruins, that's his hometown, Boston, Massachusetts. And then with the Colorado Avalanche, it just would have added depth. And then for the New York Rangers, he would have reunited with Chris Kreider, a close friend of his, and they played college hockey together as well. So, ultimately, it came down to the New York Rangers and the Colorado Avalanche. They were the top 2 teams, and it became a battle between those two for who was going to get Kevin Hayes. And ultimately, Kevin Hayes finally made his decision, and he would go on to sign a 2-year deal with the New York Rangers. Congratulations to the New York Rangers on signing this player. As I said, younger brother of Jimmy Hayes, but he's going to be much better than his brother. His brother more of a two-way forward who plays a grinding type style. Kevin is more of a scorer. He will challenge to make a roster spot on the Rangers right away. He could even play on the second line. He's supposed to be really good. He's got great hands, solid work ethic, skates well, uses his body to get to the net. He's a big forward as well. And he is exactly what the Rangers needed to round out their roster. Now, obviously, the Rangers, all they have to do is re-sign defenseman John Moore. That's starting to look real good. So, once they do that, their off-season will be finished. But that wasn't the only thing that the Rangers did, obviously. There was some more noise made in New York recently. Which now takes us to the pro tryout signings, and one of them being a signing by the Rangers. Well, it didn't happen yet, but is going to happen. and they are going to bring in for training camp veteran left winger Ryan Malone from the Tampa Bay Lightning. And honestly, to me, that if I'm a Rangers fan, that's a big risk to take because we all know about Ryan Malone and his off-ice issues this past season. Obviously, he had lots of problems with DUI charges this past year, and it created a lot of drama around him and the rest of the Lightning. And quite frankly, Ryan Malone, even when he was in the lineup, was not very good last year. You know, the 6'4", 224-pound left-handed shot, born on December 1st, 1979. You know, last year, through 57 games played, he played just 57 games, and all he had to show was 5 goals, 10 assists, and 15 points with a -7 rating, 67 penalty minutes, and 95 shots on goal. So, he did not have a good year. He's 34 years of age. He'll be 35 on December 1st. And he didn't even play a single game in the playoffs this past year for the Lightning. He was a healthy scratch. Native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Again, it is a little interesting because, again, he's not the scoring forward he used to be. We all know that. But he's coming to the Rangers hoping to, at the very least, be a good depth player and help there and give them a little bit more of an edge and maybe more of an upgrade from Tanner Glass. So, who I think the Rangers are realizing that maybe that wasn't the best signing. So, I don't know. We'll see how it all works out. But again, it's just training camp and anything can happen. He could get released. But we will see. Another pro tryout contract signing or a couple that are going to happen are also coming from the New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils have 2 training camp invitees, one that they've invited already and one that they are going to invite. The one that they've invited already, and this is actually a very interesting one, they're attempting to bring back centerman Scott Gomez, who spent last season with the Florida Panthers. And this is very interesting because the Anchorage, Alaska native saw a lot of hate when he left the New Jersey Devils in 2007 to go to the arch-rival New York Rangers. He got a lot of hate when he left the Devils to go to the Rangers. And since then, since being with the Rangers, he's been with the Montreal Canadiens for 3 seasons. He was with the San Jose Sharks for 1 year. And last year, he was with the Florida Panthers. And through 46 games last year, he had just 2 goals, 10 assists, 12 points, a -11 rating, 24 penalty minutes, and 56 shots on goal. He's 34. He'll be 35 on December 23rd. And once arguably the most graceful skater in the National Hockey League and one of the most beautiful skaters to watch. Really lost that skating ability. He's not the skater he used to be. He's much slower now. So it's a little interesting again, and it's going to be interesting to see the kind of reaction that Gomez gets. Whether he even makes the team or not, preseason can go a long way. And it'll be interesting to see if he even makes the team. I'm sure Gomez would like to, but at the very least, he can say that he's ending his career the same place he started, in New Jersey. So we'll see what happens with Scott Gomez, but I don't know if he'll make the team or not. But I actually would be surprised if he has a good camp. But who knows? Maybe the motivation of coming back to his old team will help him out. So there you have it. That is one of the Devils' tryout contract signings. And the other one that they are going to invite is former NHL defenseman Thomas Kaberle. Thomas Kaberle did not play in the NHL last season. Last season he played in the KHL, I believe. the last time he actually played was during the lockout shortened season. In a season that he actually, the last time he actually played was the lockout shortened year with the Montreal Canadiens. He only played 10 games and he didn't have any goals, but he had 3 assists, +4, and 11 shots on goal. And he did not play a single game for them in the playoffs that year. He actually spent last year in the Czech League. And he played really well over there, and he represented the Czech Republic at the Olympics and had a really good Olympic tournament. He's actually 35. He's actually 35 years of age now, or actually, he's 35 years of age. He'll be 36 on March 2nd of March 2nd next year. But he's looking for a chance to come back into the league. He probably will not be an elite defenseman like he used to be. He used to be one of the most elite playmaking defensemen in the league who could also play a good defensive game. But he's not going to be that player anymore. But at the very least, he can maybe provide the Devils some leadership and some depth on the blue line. So, again, they haven't invited him to camp yet, but they will. And whether he makes the team or not remains to be seen. So we'll see what happens. The Devils, of course, also brought Johan Hedberg back to the organization as the goaltending coach for the Albany Devils of the American Hockey League. The Tampa Bay Lightning managed to get forward Jeff Costello signed to an American Hockey League deal with the Syracuse Crunch. He was one of the players they acquired in the Jason Garrison trade. So, good job by the Lightning. Now that pretty much completes their end of the trade. So that's pretty much the case there. And then another camp signing that is going to happen is going to be defenseman Sheldon Brookbank, who wanted to return to the Chicago Blackhawks, but there was no room. They don't have the cap space, so he'll be giving himself a chance to make hands on a pro tryout deal with the Calgary Flames. For Sheldon Brookbank, again, he's not, even if he does make the team, he's probably not going to be anything more than a 7th defenseman. He is a shutdown defenseman. He's 33 years of age now. Last year with the Blackhawks, he played 48 games, and he actually was pretty solid. 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points, +2, 52 penalty minutes, and 43 shots on goal. And he also played 7 of their playoff games, had 2 assists, +3, and 2 shots on goal. He actually was very effective in the playoffs last year. And Sheldon Brookbank is one of those players who shows moments of flash. He can be a real good player for you at times. So I like that move by the Flames, inviting him to camp. He could give them depth on the blue line, and he's a shutdown defenseman, so he'll help. He could be a guy to help him out. He's undrafted. And those are all the training camp invitees and re-signings and whatnot for right now. Obviously, there will be more re-signings and signings along the way, but we'll see how it all pans out. Again, some of the big restricted free agent names have yet to re-sign, such as John Moore for the New York Rangers, Devontae Smith-Pelly for the Anaheim Ducks, Eric Jelenoff from the New Jersey Devils, names like those. And obviously the Bruins, the Boston Bruins, Riley Smith, Torrey Krug, and Matt Frazier. They have the biggest predicament of them all. And they have pretty much announced that they are going to trade a defenseman or two to get under the cap and sign those guys. And there was even some rumors floating around that they were going to try to trade David Krejci, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see it happening. But obviously that would open up a lot of eyes, and that would be a good move, and that would make a lot of teams very, very interested. So, good move. So, we'll see how that happens. We'll see how that all pans out for the Bruins. As far as, And as far as the Chicago Blackhawks situation goes, they also need to trade a defenseman, and it's looking like Nick Leddy could be the candidate to go, or Johnny Oduya. So we'll see how what all happens. There's going to be trades before the season starts. We'll definitely have some videos when these trades happen, though. So you can be sure of that. So yeah, I mean, and then you got a team like the Detroit Red Wings, who are still trying to re-sign, who's still undecided about re-signing Daniel Alfredsson. It looks like Daniel Alfredsson has confirmed that he's good to go, and signing a one-year deal with the Red Wings is something that he would want to do. He wants to come back and play this season, but it's all depending on if the Red Wings are going to be able to re-sign him. If a guy like Anthony Mantha hasn't developed yet. It's all going to come down to training camp, in my opinion, but we'll see. Daniel Alfredsson could re-sign with the team anyway. We'll see how it all works out. We also have a couple of teams getting new uniforms for the upcoming season. Only 2 teams are wearing new uniforms for this year, and they are the Anaheim Ducks and the St. Louis Blues. For the St. Louis Blues, it's actually really sort of a new it's only sort of a new uniform. They're going back to the uniforms they wore during the early 2000s, but with more of a Reebok type look. I actually did like those uniforms. I know a lot of people said that those uniforms are boring, but I liked those uniforms. I always did. I was kind of sad when those uniforms left. But so I'm really happy that the Blues have those old uniforms back. Obviously, I think they do look a little bit more yellow than they did in the past. But you know what? It's fine. It's still blue and like the St. Louis Blues, and they're gonna wear those uniforms proudly. And then you got the Anaheim Ducks. Their new uniforms. They're no longer wearing the uniforms that they wore the last few years and what they wore when they won the Stanley Cup. Their third jerseys will now become their signature home jerseys, and they also got a new road jersey to match those home jerseys. The new road jersey is white, obviously, but with black shouldering. So the new road jerseys actually look a bit on the interesting side. They look interesting. I don't know. I kind of like the alternate jerseys for the Ducks, but even though a lot of people did not like the jerseys that they've worn for the last few years, I don't know. For me personally, they kind of seem to grow on me. So they were kind of starting to grow on me, especially the white uniforms. Those white uniforms made the other uniforms around the league shine brighter. So yeah, I mean it's interesting to me to see those uniforms going away and to see the new ones coming in. So yep, those are the teams getting new uniforms. And now finally all the teams as a whole. You know, all the teams as a whole, pretty much. We all know, this was a very active offseason, the most active offseason in years, and a lot of teams were looking to improve this year, such as the New York Islanders, who are arguably the biggest winners of the offseason this year, getting Mikhail Grabovski and Nikolai Kulemin. That'll help them out in a big way. The Washington Capitals, they were pretty big winners getting Brooks Orpik and Matt Niskanen, although I will admit the Brooks Orpik contract is pretty ridiculous for a guy of his age. The Carolina Hurricanes, they didn't do much, obviously. Jay McClement was their biggest addition. They're really not that much improved. The New Jersey Devils improved quite significantly, especially offensively, with the additions of Mike Camilleri and Marty Havlat, if Havlat can stay healthy. So we'll see how that works out. Let's see. The Columbus Blue Jackets, they made themselves significantly better with the addition of Scott Hartnell. That's a good move by them. The Philadelphia Flyers, on the other hand, again, they add speed with the addition of R.J. Umberger coming back, but it definitely makes their team a little worse. I still think that the Flyers have the potential to be a playoff team, but we'll see. So, let's see. Islanders, Hurricanes, Devils, Capitals, Blue Jackets. Okay. New York Rangers, obviously, they don't have the same looking team that they had going from the playoffs. They had obviously bought out Brad Richards with their second compliance buyout. And their biggest addition this offseason was the addition of 38-year-old Dan Boyle coming over from the San Jose Sharks after his rights were traded to the New York Islanders, and he chose not to sign with the Islanders. He chose to sign with the Rangers. So that's a big addition on the blue line. It'll help out their power play. He's got a big shot. And then all their other signings were just depth additions. Lee Stempniak, Tanner Glass, Matthew Lombardi trying to make a return to the NHL. So that works. And then, of course, really the big signing for the Rangers is the signing of Kevin Hayes. That was big by the Rangers. Glad they got him signed up. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins probably did the most retooling of any team in the National Hockey League as far as player losses are concerned. They let go of Matt Niskanen, Brooks Orpik, Jussi Jokinen, James Neal. The list just goes on. They obviously Tanner Glass and Lee Stempniak, Joe Vitale. The list just goes on and on. So some they lost big names by the Penguins, but they did bring in Patrick Hornquist and Nick Spaulding from the Nashville Predators when they traded James Neal. And they obviously signed Spaulding before he would go to arbitration. They re-signed Brandon Sutter. They got Christian Ehrhoff from the Buffalo Sabres. 1 year, $4 million, but he is their big addition this offseason regardless. They added Thomas Greiss from the Arizona Coyotes. He's one of the better backup goaltenders in the league, so it solidifies their goaltending a bit. And a guy who could relieve Marc-Andre Fleury of some games. This is a big year for Marc-Andre Fleury. He's in his contract year. So we'll see how that all works out. That's the Atlantic Division. The Metropolitan Division. And in the Atlantic Division, we'll just stay in the East here. We got the Buffalo Sabres, obviously. They did a lot of moves this offseason, and one might say they maybe did more than they needed to do because they potentially could have taken themselves out of the Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel sweepstakes with adding Brian Giunta and Josh Georges from the Montreal Canadiens and getting Josh Georges at a real cheap price. Andre Mazzaros from the Boston Bruins. Players like that. They got both Matt Molson and Cody McCormick back after trading them both at the deadline to the Minnesota Wild last year. So a lot more moves than the Sabres needed to make, in my opinion. The Florida Panthers, they made quite a few moves. They bought out Ed Jovanovski, their captain, but they brought in Jussi Jokinen. Dave Bolland from the Toronto Maple Leafs, Jussi Jokinen from the Pittsburgh Penguins, among other players as well. They brought in quite a few players. Obviously, they drafted Aaron Ekblad. He'll be expected to play this year, assuming he's going to be recovered from his concussions. They brought in Sean Thornton from the Boston Bruins. So, that's a pretty big signing for the fourth line. So, yeah, they made a lot of moves. Derek McKenzie from the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's a valuable depth player. And they also brought in Al Montoya from the Winnipeg Jets. So, big moves by the Panthers. They did exactly what they needed to do. The Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously, all the moves that they made, they were one of the more active teams, but they didn't make any humongous signings. All the signings they made were to retool their bottom six. as well as a little bit of their defense, and become a better puck possession team. Their biggest signing would probably be Stefan Robidas from the Anaheim Ducks. The 37-year-old veteran defenseman can still really play this game, possesses the puck well, hits well in the neutral zone, and has one of the most accurate slap shots in the National Hockey League. But other signings they made they got Roman Polak from the St. Louis Blues in a trade for Carl Gunnarsson. They got Daniel Winnick from the Anaheim Ducks. They brought back Leo Komarov from the KHL. They also brought in Petri Kontiola from the KHL. They'll both help out. And so, yeah, they brought players like that, were was the base of what they brought in. Daniel Winnick will help them out, too. So, good move by the Toronto Maple. Good moves by the Toronto Maple Leafs to retool their bottom six, because that's what needed to be retooled. David Booth coming over from the Vancouver Canucks. Mike Santorelli as well. Those guys will help him out as well. The Ottawa Senators, they were one of the weaker teams at the offseason this year, only adding, losing Jason Spezza and Ales Hemsky, both to the Dallas Stars. They traded Spezza, and in return, they did get Alex Chiasson in that trade. He's the centerpiece on their side. And they also brought in David Legwand from the Detroit Red Wings. Those were the only moves that they made, as they fully want to rely on their youngsters, Kyle Turris and Mika Zibanejad, to take the 1 and 2 center spots. But Legwand will be a good addition. He'll add veteranship to the team. The Detroit Red Wings, they completely struck out at free agency. Obviously, they're still pondering Daniel Alfredsson, but they wanted Christian Ehrhoff, they wanted Dan Boyle, they wanted Matt Niskanen, but they struck out on all those guys and were left by signing just guys to two-way contracts. Kevin Porter from the Buffalo Sabres and Andy Mealy from the Arizona Coyotes, who's proven to be nothing but a college bust after winning the Hobey Baker Award so many years ago. He's got great hands, but has not lived up to the hype that he was given, that was thrown upon him when he was signed. Let's see. The Montreal Canadiens, they didn't do too much either. They did bring in Tom Gilbert from the Florida Panthers. Kind of a surprising loss by the Panthers, considering how good he was. For them with Brian Campbell. They were a very underrated shutdown pair. But Gilbert can also provide offense with a big shot of his. He was pretty much their biggest addition. They brought in Manny Malhotra from the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's pretty much it. Montreal didn't make any big moves this offseason. Tampa Bay Lightning, they were very active. They made a lot of moves. Obviously, they got Jason Garrison from the Vancouver Canucks, Brian Boyle and Anton Strawman, both from the New York Rangers, from their Cup team, from their Cup Finals team, I should say. Evgeny Nabokov from the New York Islanders, Brendan Morrow from the St. Louis Blues. So they made a lot of additions. They did also they had added Sam Gagner, but they only added him to trade him away. They traded both him and B.J. Crombie to the Arizona Coyotes, and they traded Nate Thompson to the Anaheim Ducks. So interesting moves by the Lightning there. But Jason Garrison is probably the big addition by the Lightning this offseason. And then you got the Boston Bruins. They did not do anything this offseason, with the exception of signing Simon Gagner to a pro tryout contract, and they did lose a couple players. They are going to make at least a move or two come training camp, because they need to get back under the cap and re-sign their 3 restricted free agents. So one of Johnny Boychuk or Adam McQuaid or Matt Bartkowski, or even all three will see themselves out the door in Boston this year. They could both be out the door this year to re-sign those guys and get younger. So we'll see what happens with the Bruins. And we'll see if Simon Gagne could maybe make the team at a training camp as well. So that's the entire Eastern Conference. Then we got the West. In the Central Division, we have the Winnipeg Jets. They didn't do too much except sign Matthew Perreault from the Anaheim Ducks and TJ Gagliardi from the Calgary Flames to add some more depth to their bottom six. The Nashville Predators, they were pretty active. They added a lot of center depth, bringing in Mike Ribeiro from the Arizona Coyotes, who was bought out via regular buyout. The only player bought out via regular buyout. They brought in Olli Jokinen from the division rival Winnipeg Jets, Derek Roy from the St. Louis Blues, Anton Volchenkov from the New Jersey Devils. So they added quite a few players. And they let go of Michael Del Zotto, though. They did not qualify him. He was another addition by the Philadelphia Flyers, an emergency addition. And this is actually something I did mean to mention. In an emergency addition, when Kimmo Timonen was announced that he would miss a large chunk of the season with blood clots. But now there's been an update on that injury. And it looks like the long career of Kimmo Timonen will be over shorter than they expected. In early August, the Flyers front office revealed that Kimmo Timonen had been hospitalized with blood clots in his leg and both lungs. Now the Finnish newspaper Savon Sanomat was reporting that Timonen had been diagnosed with a hereditary condition known as protein C deficiency. This devastating diagnosis could signal the end of the Finnish Blue Liners' long NHL career. According to the National Institutes of Health, protein C deficiency puts Timonen at a lifelong risk of developing a type of blood clot known as a deep vein thrombosis. These clots can dislodge in the bloodstream and travel to the lungs, causing potentially life-threatening pulmonary embolisms. The likely course of action is to put Timonen on special blood thinners for the rest of his life. Such a drug regime will make it too dangerous for Timonen to play hockey at a professional level ever again. Even a minor injury could potentially result in bleeding that is difficult to control. Timonen's initial blood clots already figured to keep the Blue Liner out long-term, possibly the entire 2014-15 season. Unfortunately for the Flyers, he might never lace up the skates again. So that makes the signing of Michael Del Zotto all the more important. And for Kimmo Timonen, I really pray to him, hope he gets better, hope that he can continue to live his life. It's just too bad his career has to end this way. It really is. A very well-respected player throughout this league, and he will be missed. So that makes the Michael Del Zotto signing all the more important. Going back now, that's the Nashville Predators, and then we got the 5 playoff teams from the Central Division. The Dallas Stars. The Jason Spezza acquisition was the biggest trade acquisition of the offseason this year. He adds depth, even more depth to their center position. They also brought in Ales Hemsky from the Ottawa Senators to add chemistry to Spezza, who has a year remaining on his contract. And they brought in Patrick Eaves from the Nashville Predators to add depth to their bottom 6. So, very active offseason by the Dallas Stars, who are still trying to trade Sergei Gonchar, maybe, and clear some cap, because he is very old now. He only has a year remaining on his contract, but still. He's a player that they're trying to get rid of. The Minnesota Wild, obviously, we mentioned some of their losses, Matt Molson, Cody McCormick. They only made one real big addition this offseason. I mean, they added Jordan Schrader from the Vancouver Canucks, a former first-round pick. But the big addition by the Minnesota Wild this offseason was arguably the number one free agent on the market, definitely the number one free agent to me, Thomas Vanek, who split the year between the Buffalo Sabres, New York Islanders, and Montreal Canadiens last year. It was rumored long before the season began that Vanek would go to the Minnesota Wild when he became a UFA, and he did, signing a 3-year deal worth just over $19 million. So, good signing by the Minnesota Wild. He rounds out their top 6 and reunites with Jason Pominville. So, Thomas Vanek is now a member of the Minnesota Wild. Then we got the Chicago Blackhawks, the defending Stanley Cup champions. They finally get the second line center that they were looking for, sort of, in Brad Richards coming over from the New York Rangers. They signed him to a 1-year deal. Not the same player he used to be, but at the very least could add a veteran presence and buy a guy like Teuvo Teravainen some time to develop one more year in the American Hockey League before he eventually comes up and becomes the solidified second-line center. Because Brad Richards can still be somewhat of an effective player and still be a 20-goal scorer, 50-point scorer. You know, hopefully it works out for Brad Richards, and hopefully he becomes a solid player for the Hawks. For the St. Louis Blues, they made a couple of pretty big additions. One of them, they brought in Carl Gunnarsson when they dealt Roman Polak to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They added Yori Laterra to round out their bottom 6, coming over from the KHL. He'll be a good player for them. They re-signed Steve Ott when Vladimir Sobotka left. And then the big addition for the St. Louis Blues this offseason was the addition of centerman Paul Stastny coming over from the Colorado Avalanche. Paul Stastny is expected to come in and be their solidified top-line center, which would move David Backes to the second-line center spot, which is probably where he belongs. They also made some pretty interesting signings. Peter Mueller, they brought back from the KHL. Nate Prosser, Chris Butler to add depth on the blue line. Joachim Lindstrom comes back to the NHL. So, yeah, I mean, some pretty interesting signings by the St. Louis Blues. And then the Colorado Avalanche, how they reacted to losing Paul Stastny. Well, they got older. They got Brad Stewart from the San Jose Sharks. They brought in Danny Briere from the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for P.A. Parenteau. That was actually the big addition by Montreal this offseason, bringing in P.A. Parenteau from the Avalanche to round out their top 6. Danny Briere will be a bottom 6 guy, but will help them out in the playoffs. But the big addition for the Avalanche this offseason was bringing in Jarome Iginla from the Boston Bruins. The Bruins wanted to re-sign Iginla, but they just didn't have the cap room. And they didn't want to sign him to another 1-year deal with bonuses. So Jarome Iginla, even at 36, 37 years of age, should round out their top 6 and make up for the loss of Paul Stastny. This will give Nathan MacKinnon the opportunity to move to his natural center position. He'll probably center the second line for now, but eventually he could be expected to overtake Matt Duchene's top line center role. So we'll see how it all works out in the end. Let's see. They added, and that's the Central Division. Then last but not least, the Pacific Division. For the Edmonton Oilers, obviously, they drafted Leon Draisaitl with the 3rd overall pick. Sam Reinhart was the 2nd overall pick by the Buffalo Sabres. But Draisaitl could be a player to make it this year. He'll be the replacement for Sam Gagner. They brought in Teddy Purcell from the Tampa Bay Lightning. in the Gagne trade. They managed to re-sign Justin Schultz just recently. So some good moves by the Edmonton Oilers this year. But the addition of Teddy Purcell will help them out big time. Oh yeah, and they brought in forward Benoit Pouliot from the New York Rangers and defenseman Mark Fane from the New Jersey Devils. They're two big signings. They got Keith Aulie from the Tampa Bay Lightning and Nikita Nikitin from the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's an overpaid defenseman, but a good player going there. The Calgary Flames, they made a few additions, nothing too major. They did lose Mike Camilleri, and that was a big loss for them, but an intended one so that they could get younger. They did bring in Derek Engelland from the Pittsburgh Penguins, but he was very much overpaid, and he's a player who's not playing anywhere higher than the bottom six. But he does add physicality and depth to their blue line. That much is true. They brought in Devin Setaguchi from the Winnipeg Jets. He was a recent signing. They did re-sign Lance Bolma at last. And they added Mason Raymond from the Toronto Maple Leafs, so I was surprised he didn't re-sign with the Leafs because he was so good with the Leafs, but he'll help out the Flames and add some more depth. And they brought in goaltender Jonas Hiller from the Anaheim Ducks. He was their big signing this offseason. The Vancouver Canucks, they were the most active Canadian team of all. They obviously traded away Ryan Kessler to the Anaheim Ducks, and in return got Nick Bonino and Lucas Biza, and the 24th overall pick, which turned out to be Jared McCann. And they also got the 85th overall pick in the third round. They then traded that to the New York Rangers to acquire Derek Dorsett, who was really good in the Stanley Cup Finals for them. So he'll help out the Canucks bottom six. They also brought in Radim Vrbata from the Arizona Coyotes. He'll probably play on the top line with the Sedin twins, one of the most underrated snipers in the game. They got Jake Virtanen with the 6th overall pick. Sam Bennett, of course, with the 4th overall pick by the Flames. Almost forgot to mention that. And so, yeah, I mean, and the big addition for the Vancouver Canucks was the addition of Ryan Miller coming over from the St. Louis Blues. The Blues chose not to bring him back, but he's the big addition by the Canucks. He'll solidify their goaltending at least for the next 3 years, despite the fact that he is 34 years of age. With that, we got the Arizona Coyotes. They didn't do a whole lot this offseason. Again, they did get Sam Gagner and B.J. Crombeen in that three-way trade with the Edmonton Oilers and Tampa Bay Lightning. Sam Gagner is their big addition this offseason. That was pretty much the base of what they did. I mean, they brought in Joe Vitale from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they brought in Devin Dubnyk from the Hamilton Tigers of the American Hockey League. He ended up with the Montreal Canadiens affiliate and not playing a game for them, for the Montreal. He comes to the Coyotes with the opportunity for a second chance to prove that he could at least be an above-average backup goaltender to Mike Smith. He's big, so he should help them out, and hopefully should make up for the loss of Thomas Greiss. Then we got both the Los Angeles Kings and the San Jose Sharks. Both of them did not make that many moves this offseason. For the Los Angeles Kings, obviously, they didn't even need to. Really, all they needed to do was re-sign Marian Gaborik and Matt Green and Dwight King, and they re-signed all those guys. Gaborik was the big re-signing, but they let Willie Mitchell go. He was another Florida Panthers signing I forgot about. He will be a big addition for the Panthers and bring Cup experience to their blue line. Two-time Cup champion. But the Kings, they only added forwards who will really just be fill-ins. Adam Cracknell from the St. Louis Blues and David Vander Gulik from the Colorado Avalanche He'll go straight to the minors. Cracknell will probably be a 13th or 14th forward, though, so he'll add some depth to their forward group. And then the San Jose Sharks, arguably the worst team during the offseason this year. One of the bigger losers of the offseason, letting go of Dan Boyle and Marty Havlat via compliance buyout, and trading away Brad Stewart, which probably was the move that made the least amount of sense. And really the big player that they added this offseason was John Scott from the Buffalo Sabres, who I personally consider the worst player in the National Hockey League today. He's just a big guy, and that's it. He doesn't do anything else. I mean, other moves, they got Taylor Fadoon from the Edmonton Oilers. He'll have a shot at cracking the defense. And maybe the move that could most benefit the Sharks this offseason was the acquisition of Ty McGinn from the Philadelphia Flyers. He could battle for a roster spot. The younger brother of Jamie McGinn, who is a former Shark himself. But Ty McGinn is expected to be a good depth player one day, and he could make the Sharks team and help them out. But the Sharks, so much drama revolving around their organization this offseason, and there's still a lot of rumors floating of them still trying to trade Joe Thornton. There's minor rumors of them trying to trade Patrick Marleau as well, but Joe Thornton is the big trade chip that they are trying to get rid of. Same thing with the Philadelphia Flyers and Vinny LeCavalier. So we'll see how that all works out. And then last but not least, the Anaheim Ducks. Again, they probably the biggest offseason in their franchise history, acquiring Ryan Kessler from the Vancouver Canucks in the trade that sent Nick Bonino and Lucas Biza away. He'll solidify their center depth. They got Danny Heatley at a low-risk, high-reward contract, 1 year, $1 million, from the Minnesota Wild. Clayton Stoner, also from the Minnesota Wild. They couldn't get him re-signed. They wanted to re-sign him. Now, he may be a little bit overpaid, 4 years, $13 million, and he's a guy who probably won't even go past the bottom pair, but still a good addition by the Ducks. They also brought in, they got Nate Thompson from the Tampa Bay Lightning in a trade, Louis LeBlanc from the Montreal Canadiens in a trade / signing to a 1-year deal as an RFA, Jason LaBarbera from the Edmonton Oilers to solidify their goaltending and add a veteran backup with leadership. So those are pretty much some of the big moves by the Ducks this offseason. Those were all the big moves. Teemu Selanne, obviously, retired. Saku Koivu is still pondering retirement. It's undecided with him. They let Jonas Hiller go to the Calgary Flames, Daniel Winnick and Stefan Robida to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they didn't qualify Matthew Perreault as an RFA. He went to the Winnipeg Jets. So really, all the players that really left the Ducks, that I really just realized this, went on to go to Canadian teams. So, very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Because Jonas Hiller went to the Calgary Flames, Daniel Winnick and Stefan Robida went to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Matthew Perreault went to the Winnipeg Jets, and both Nick Bonino and Lucas Biza were dealt to the Vancouver Canucks. Saku Koivu is obviously still unsigned and still unsure whether he's going to go anywhere. It's potential that he could go back to the Montreal Canadiens to finish his career. And obviously Teemu Selanne is retired at least from NHL play. He may go spend 1 year for his home country in the KHL. But we'll see how that works out. But ultimately, that's pretty much the base of what all the teams did this offseason. So a lot of big moves this offseason and possibly still more to come. We'll see how it all works out. So, now finally going to get to the final thing about this video, our final part of this video, a recap of all the teams that I said are going to make the playoffs this year. It's pretty much the same as last year, except with one replacement in each conference. In the East, we have my replacement for the East for the Eastern Conference, I said that the Detroit Red Wings will not go back to the playoffs. They will miss for the first time in 23 years. Their long playoff streak will come to an end, and the Washington Capitals will go back to the playoffs. And for the West, I said that the San Jose Sharks would not make the playoffs because of all the drama that's surrounding the team, and that the Arizona Coyotes would make the playoffs. I'm taking a huge gamble with them. But other than that, for the East, the Boston Bruins will be back, the Tampa Bay Lightning will be back, the Montreal Canadiens will be back. All three of them will be back, no question about it. I mean, the Detroit Red Wings could go back to the playoffs, but I just don't think they will. I think their team's even more of a mess this season than it was last year. Some people say that the Florida Panthers have the potential to make it, and they kind of do, actually. They will have a winning record this year. They made some good moves, but I don't think they'll make the playoffs. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they have potential as well. They re-signed James Reimer. Their depth is much better this year, so they have the potential to make it as well. So we'll see how that works out. Those are going to be the bubble teams. I mean, actually, I'll just do a full topic on bubble teams as well. But the Boston Bruins will go back to the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Lightning and the Montreal Canadiens will also both go back to the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Penguins will go back. The New York Rangers will go back. The Columbus Blue Jackets will go back. And the Philadelphia Flyers should be back in the playoffs. A lot of people are saying that they won't go back to the playoffs this year, but I think they will. I mean, again, and as I said, the Washington Capitals will be the one new team in the playoffs this year. But bubble teams that could make the playoffs include the New Jersey Devils, probably the biggest bubble team of all, the New York Islanders. They're going to be significantly improved this year. The Toronto Maple Leafs, and even the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers will actually be a bubble team this year. But then all the other teams, the Ottawa Senators, the Buffalo Sabres, the Carolina Hurricanes, they won't be that good. So Jersey Devils, New York Islanders. So yeah, I mean the Carolina Hurricanes, I guess, could be a bubble team also. They're a borderline team, but they won't make the playoffs. They will not go back to the playoffs. And then in the West, as I said, the Los Angeles Kings obviously going to be back in the playoffs. Anaheim Ducks obviously going to be back in the playoffs. They're both cup contenders. The Chicago Blackhawks and St. Louis Blues, they'll both be back. The Colorado Avalanche will be back, though they may not win the division again. They may not have as good of a regular season. What I think with the Colorado Avalanche, they won't have as good of a regular season, but they'll have a better postseason. That's my opinion on the Avalanche. The Dallas Stars will be back. They're going to be better this year. And then the Minnesota Wild, they should be back, but that goaltending is a major question. And that goaltending could set them back this year, and they have to be better on the road. But, like I said, the Arizona Coyotes, in my opinion, will be the one new team. But bubble teams include the San Jose Sharks, obviously. But they could go back to the playoffs. The Vancouver Canucks, they'll be better this year. And they could actually be a playoff team as well. They could be the third Pacific Division team in. But they're a bubble team. And the Nashville Predators are a bubble team as well. They have a shot at cracking the playoffs solely because of that blue line of theirs. They have a loaded blue line. But the Calgary Flames, they'll be improved, but they won't be a playoff team. The Edmonton Oilers, same thing. Winnipeg Jets, they won't be a playoff team, though. So those guys probably won't make the playoffs. But that's pretty much the base of the playoffs. So, once again, the final postseason season, I'm not going to predict standings or anything like that. And but I will say who's going to be in the playoffs, and I will predict who could potentially make the Stanley Cup Finals. In the East, not in any order, the Boston Bruins, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the the Boston Bruins, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Montreal Canadiens, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Rangers, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Washington Capitals, and the Philadelphia Flyers. And for the West, we have the Los Angeles Kings, the Anaheim Ducks, the Arizona Coyotes, the Chicago Blackhawks, the St. Louis Blues, the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, and the Minnesota Wild. And then, like I said, the Detroit Red Wings and San Jose Sharks, who both made it last year, will not be in this year. And every other bubble team will just miss as well, specifically the New Jersey Devils and the Vancouver Canucks. So, as far as my Stanley Cup Finals prediction is concerned, now see, I'm not a guy who likes to make Stanley Cup predictions, but if I were to make a prediction this year, I, believe it or not, would have to say the Chicago Blackhawks will represent the West, and believe it or not, the Tampa Bay Lightning will represent the East. They have a much better team this year. They're one of the better depth teams in the league. They are going to be a cup contender. I think they're going to go to the finals this year, but I think the Chicago Blackhawks will ultimately come out on top in 6 games. They probably would have beaten the Los Angeles Kings in the Western Conference Finals again had they had a second-line center to give them that extra push. They now have a second-line center. I mean, Brad Richards doesn't put them over the top, but it at least solidifies their center depth for now until Teuvo Teravainen comes up and becomes an established hockey player. And that's pretty much the base of everything, guys. That's pretty much it. My prediction is that the Chicago Blackhawks will be Stanley Cup champions for the second time in 3 years and the third time in 6 years, winning 4-2 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. And that is my Stanley Cup prediction. That's also my playoff predictions. And that is it! We did it, guys! We have officially concluded the NHL's 30 teams in 30 days. That is it for the full recap. Thank you all so much for joining me on this journey. We've finished the 30 teams in 30 days for this year. And that will do it for episode 163 of Hockey on the Spot. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This was a long, long road, but we did it. We absolutely did it. Really excited for the season to get going. Got a few days to go. We got some time though before the season starts. In less than 2 weeks, all the Prospects tournaments will begin. Specifically, the Traverse City Prospects tournament. That's considerably the best one. And then before you know it, training camp will begin and the preseason will begin. But again, I've done videos for 32 straight days. That included the final day of July. And in result of this, I'm not going to be putting out any videos for a while. I was thinking about maybe doing one tomorrow about updates on the expansion teams. Maybe I'll just cover that quickly right now before we wrap this up. It's pretty much a definite confirmation that Las Vegas is going to have a team as late as 2016. Seattle is still an intended destination, with the name the Seattle Sonics being brought back to the world of sports, but obviously a hockey team, not a basketball team. The basketball team ultimately became the Oklahoma City Thunder, who still exist today and are very, very successful. And then there's also a rumor by 2017 to have 34 teams, a team back in Quebec City, and a second Toronto team. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do like this team in Seattle and Las Vegas, and even potentially Portland. Portland was rumored to be a secondary city if one of those two couldn't work out. But, yeah. That's pretty much the update with expansions, but this sport is going to expand to more than 30 teams It's the first time that any of the 4 sports will have an expansion team since, I believe, the Houston Texans of the NFL in 2002, or the Charlotte Bobcats of the NBA. It was one of those two. We haven't had an expansion team in a very long time, but obviously the NFL has had 32 teams for quite a long time. The NHL will become the second sport to exceed 30 teams. Not this season, and maybe not next season, but definitely by 2016. So we'll see. It's all a work in progress, and it's going to be a very exciting time. The sport is growing, people, and it's going to be exciting to see more teams come into the league. And so that's pretty much the update with that. I just wanted to cover that real quick so I didn't have to come back and do another whole video on this. It's a great thing for the sport, though. It really is. And now that'll officially do it for our full 30 teams in 30 days recap, as well as our updates on the expansion teams. I'm not going to put that in the title of the video, but so you guys will just have to watch the video in order to hear about this update. And so, that'll now officially do it for episode 163 of Hockey on the Spot, as we officially close out the 30 teams in 30 days. I'm not going to be doing another video for a while, guys. I'm literally burnt out from doing all these videos. You have no idea how burnt out I am. This completely pushed me to my limits. So I'll definitely have 1, maybe 2 videos out before the preseason starts. Maybe 1 video before the preseason begins, and 1 or 2 videos during the training camp and the preseason before the regular season starts. I'll definitely be doing it. 1 video that will be for sure will be the day before the regular season, or even the morning of the start of the regular season, depending on my schedule, depending on my work schedule and stuff. But I am not going to be doing a video for a while, at least for a couple of weeks. So thank you guys, though, for bearing with me for this month. And also throw the final day of July in there. And so that's it. That's it. We're done. I'm done. I'm tired. I'm not doing a video for a while. Again, I'll have 1 or 2 up before the season starts, but it's not going to be for a while, unless there's a big trade that happens or a big free agent signing that happens. And so, with that being said, once again, that'll do it for episode 163 of Hockey on the Spot. And as always, this has been Hockey on the Spot, Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll see you all again real soon. Thank you all for joining me this month, and as always, have a fantastic day.